Hello, everyone. Welcome back. I'm Christine Dixon of The Ordinary Sacred, and today we are going to continue in the wonderful book by Martha Sweezy, Internal Family Systems Therapy for Shame and Guilt. And we're finally getting into the section on exiles, which are our most vulnerable, tender parts. Our protectors really develop around those parts, right? To protect them from the world, or perhaps protect us and our system from them, from the exiles, because they really have so much pain and shame and terror and hopelessness. And it feels uncomfortable when they fled the system. So a lot of times the protectors are trying to keep them buried and exiled. And in this first example, it's wonderful because the exile is represented by an egg. People make fun of me because I say egg, and I guess I'm supposed to say egg. I don't know. What do you say? Egg, egg, leg, leg. I don't know. Tomato, tomato. So anyway, you might hear me say egg. This is about a woman named Esther and her exile who appears like an egg. And often our exiles will appear like young children or infants, but sometimes they will appear very symbolically. And this gives valuable information about the nature of that exile, as you'll see in this example. So let me read it to you. So Esther was a 43-year-old cisgender, heterosexual, divorced Trinidadian American woman who by choice had no children. Her mother had belonged to a rigidly patriarchal Christian sect as she was growing up and had been violent toward her and her younger sister if they broke rules or displeased anyone in a position of authority. Anyone relate to that? Her father, an officer in the military who was often away, was also a strict disciplinarian. And Esther had been in IFS therapy for 6 months. So we start with Esther, who says, "These parts view me as a precariously balanced egg, which they're rolling along carefully." Again, this is such a beautiful image metaphor for how these parts are feeling about the fragility and the precariousness of this part. They are shocked to think that anyone else would be interested in keeping the egg from breaking. They thought that this was their job, but they're very interested in the idea that we could keep it from falling or being broken. So again, often our protective parts feel, first of all, very fixated on the part that they're trying to help. They're incredibly loyal, and they are doing a hard, focused job and not often looking around them, right? They don't have a wide perspective. They have a very fixed perspective, and they don't even think about anything else. This is my job, and this is what I have to do or else. And so it's interesting that her parts had never thought that they could get help or that anyone else would even be interested in helping them because they've been doing this for so long. So to find out that the self may be able to help them and be interested in helping them, they're intrigued. So Martha says, "Is it okay for you to meet the egg?" And by you, I think she means Esther's self. Esther says, "First, they have to believe that the egg and I are different." Very true. But they're beginning to see that it's true. Often, because the protectors are so focused on what they're protecting, if you try to get access to the exile and you say, "How old do you think I am?" They will say the age of the exile because that is what they see, right? You're an infant. And they genuinely think that because that's all they see. So updating them can be really helpful. Maybe having the exile stand next to you so they can see you both at the same time. So Martha says, "Does the egg talk to them?" Just a curious question. And Esther says they won't say. So they're not talking. They may or may not think that it's Esther's self, or they may not trust yet. And Martha says, what does the egg need? Esther says, to be safe. Yeah. And so Martha says, would they like to know more about you? Again, really trying to facilitate the relationship between Esther's self and these protectors. Esther says, yes. There are 5 or 6 of them. So again, this egg is highly protected. Often our most vulnerable parts will have armies around them, and are really devoted to protecting the vulnerable part. So wow, there's 5 or 6 of them. Martha says, ask them to look you in the eye and let you know who they see. Esther says, they're surprised again, and they're interested in getting my help, but first they have to watch me for a while. Yeah, very, very common, very valid that parts need experience. They need small experiments, like I keep saying, to gain evidence that the self is trustworthy. Martha checks in and says, do they know who I mean by you? Esther says, yes, I'm conveying it non-verbally. They like that I showed up. Okay, good. So they are warming up to her and recognizing that herself, Esther's self, is different than them and different than the exile, and is offering help, attention, curiosity, appreciation, and help. All right, so Martha fast forwards 1 month later. So in the preceding session, the egg's protectors met Esther's self for the first time. A month later, after they had been watching her closely, they agreed to stop rolling the egg around and let her touch it. So again, they gained evidence, possibly by Esther's self just checking in with them every day, showing that she would show up and listen to them and not bypass them. A lot of times the self gains trust by resting, by not doing anything without their permission. Esther says, the egg is shivering. Martha says, what needs to happen? Esther said, it doesn't talk. And so Martha says, so what needs to happen? Esther says, I need them to let me put the egg in my heart, but they cannot agree to that yet. Martha says, what worries them? Like, what are they afraid would happen if you put it in your heart? Esther says, they say, what about us? So Martha says, well, what do they need? Esther says, they don't want to be parted from the egg. I know what to do. My heart is a palace, so they can all live there. We will put the egg on a silk pillow. And then there's a long pause, and she says, yes. And Martha says, yes. And Esther says, the egg is perfect. So this is beautiful. I love that Martha keeps asking her, so what needs to be done? She keeps deferring to Esther's self rather than trying to interject ideas. She just, what needs to be done? And eventually Esther's self comes in and says, I know exactly how to respond, which the self does. The self knows always how to respond. So when we are really in that core heart space of calm, curiosity, compassion, confidence, connectedness, we can do whatever we feel impelled to do, and it will be the right thing. So it's really about understanding what that feeling state is, of tapping into that self energy. And when you're in it, there's clarity and there's confidence about what to do. That really is the experience. And you can see it here, how she was able to meet the concerns that, and understand that all these protectors that protected the egg are likely very young children in her system as well. Maybe the egg is an infant, I don't know. And these protective parts are 3, 4, 5 years old. And they're saying, what about us? Like, we need mothering. We need connection also. And she says, oh, my heart is a palace. There is room for you all. You can still be with the egg, and you can be with me, and I can take care of the egg, and you can rest every now and then and play or do whatever you want to do. So yeah, beautiful. So Martha says, do any of the guardians have burdens? Esther says, yes, they've been afraid. Again, Martha just says, what do they need? And Esther says, none of us want fear in the palace. So they will leave it in a safe. And Martha says, how does that feel to them? Esther says, it's a relief for them. Martha says, now, what do they want to invite in? So this putting their fear was really their burden, right? Just constant hypervigilance on the egg, taking care of it, the fear of it getting breaking or being harmed or damaged in some way. And so that was really what they carried. So their unburdening ritual was to put the fear in a safe outside of the palace, so that they could be in a space where they didn't have to carry that fear anymore. And once the protectors or the exiles, have unburdened, have released their burden, they can invite in new qualities or new activities. So Martha asks, now what would they want to invite in? And Esther says, courage and confidence. And Martha says, how does that feel? Esther says, very good. They will stay here. And she pats her heart right here with the egg. So I want to make a note that what they wanted to invite in are qualities of self, because parts actually also have a self. And when they are able to release their burden, for exiles, that's their extreme emotion or belief. And for protectors, it's their extreme, they can also have emotions, but their job that they were doing. When they can release that, their self qualities actually naturally flow back in. So you'll see things like some of those 8 C's. This one says courage and confidence, or creativity is a common one. Calm. You'll see a lot of the 5 P's, presence, playfulness, right? A wider perspective. Those are often what naturally comes forward, is more self energy in the whole system. Okay, and then the last note is, in this session, we learned that the egg was perfect, which means it had been protected and was unharmed. So I asked if the protectors had burdens. Typically, protectors come to view their job as burdens after an exile has unburdened. Yeah. But the main burden for these protectors was their fear for the egg, which they had tucked away. Their job was to make sure it didn't break. Now they could begin to relax. Yeah, this is an interesting note, that this can be very common too, that sometimes protectors are actually protecting a part of you that they see as pristine or innocent, untainted, before the trauma happened, right? So the exile sometimes will actually be this young, innocent, playful child or infant before the world, attachment wounds happened, traumas happened, conditioning happened. And so that's actually what all those protectors were protecting. What a beautiful thing, right? But yet they're young. They're like these 10-year-olds trying to look over driving the bus. Ooh, yay. But they're tired and they can't do their job, and they're full of fear. And the self is like the adult, the loving, wise adult of the system, coming and knocking on the door of the bus and saying, hey, I see you. I see how hard you've worked, but you can rest now. I'm here. There's an adult here now. I can drive the bus. You can go in the back and rest, take a nap, play. We'll stop and you can run on the beach, whatever you want to do. And they're usually very relieved, but they can't stop unless they trust the self to drive the bus, or they trust that whatever they're driving and protecting is safe. So I love this example. I hope you enjoy it as well. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them in the comments below.